back to another episode of the Soup Bowl. I am your host, Renee Murdoch. I am so happy that you are here, that you are liking, that you are sharing, and that you are going on this journey with me called life as we know it. And so I'm just so happy about it because we was never meant to do life alone. If we out here struggling in these streets, you don't have to. You're struggling because you choose to. And so we're supposed to be doing this thing together called life, gleaning from one another, learning from one another, growing together with one another. And so we do know that when we get in the soup bowl, anything is liable to happen. But do know when it gets messy, it can always get cleaned up. And that is the part about the learning process. So we don't want to lay there in the spills. We don't want to ignore it, but we want to go ahead and deal with it. And so that's what we're doing here. It is cold. C-O-L-D. D. Or maybe I should say C-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-O-L-D. Right? Cold here. And so we don't mind the cold. We don't mind the cold just as long as that we're prepared for it. So, but yeah, so it's cold over here, out here where we're at. And so hopefully you are staying safe, you're staying warm, and all of these good things. We are still at the beginning of this calendar year where we talked about this, numerous of times about people making goals and resolutions and things of that nature. And so I'm still talking about this thing because I want you to be successful this year. I want to be successful this year. I want to go ahead and make the things, make them plain, make it realistic, map it out, and get some results out of it. And I want the same thing for you. And so we've been talking about reaching our goals. And so the previous episode, we were talking about sustaining progress. And so we're here in part 2. I have a couple of more points that I want to make in regards to sustaining process, right? And becoming the person who achieves them, right? We want to make sure that we're achieving the goals that we set out to do. And hopefully, because you are into this, a few months, that you are actually sustaining progress. And if not, if you want to just get started, we can do that as well. But we know in the last episode, we were talking about identifying, right? Your identity must match the goal, right? And so you must be able to identify, right, with that goal to even get started with it. If you can't identify in it of who you are, then you are not going to meet that goal, right? So this is something that people often overlook, right? You will never consistently outperform the identity you believe about yourself. So if you're not thinking that this is who you are and based upon that goal, then you're not going to reach it. So if you want some new outcomes, then you're going to have to be able to see the new version of yourself in those outcomes, because you're going to have to do things differently. You cannot do them the same. I'm going to stop trying to clap so much. I just get excited. I get so pumped up about this stuff. And so we want to make sure that you're able to meet the goal, but you're going to have to see a different way of yourself, right? So that was one of the points. I'm just going to wrap. And then making sure that there's some accountability. You have to be accountable, right? Accountability is not a weakness. Accountability is not laying down. Accountability is not allowing someone to just run over you, right? That's not what it is. Accountability is wisdom, right? It's healthy. It's healthy to have it, right? So there's a few things that we're going to make sure that we have healthy accountability. And that is making sure the person that is going to hold us accountable is someone that we trust, someone that is not going to manipulate, someone that's not going to be dogmatic, someone that's not going to force us into doing things, right? But they're making sure that they're exposing our blind spots. There's nothing wrong with your blind spots being exposed, because we need to know, because we can't see them. And so you may be thinking that you're moving in a certain way. In reality, you're really not. And so that is the purpose, right? That we want to make sure that you have that accountability, because it reinforces consistency. And if you don't have consistency, it's going to be like, just like that. It's going to be like, you're just going to drop. You're just going to fade out. You're going to fade out. And we don't want you to fade out. Like, you know, how you just keep washing clothes over and over and over again, and then eventually it fades out, like the black, it becomes like a, like not a like jet black anymore, but it becomes like a gray black, right? So we don't want that to happen. We don't want to even get you into like, you know, the brownish type color. We want you to stay the color that you started with. And so we don't want you to fade out. So you got to make sure that you have the right accountability. And this person or persons do not control you. So let's get into one of the other points, right, that we weren't able to talk about the previous episode. And that was expect resistance. Internal and external. It's going to happen. You're not going to get away from it, but you're going to get resistance. You're going to get it. So don't think that you're not going to have resistance in anything that you set out to do. It's going to be there. When you get up in the morning, when you have to get up in the morning, there's a little bit of resistance there for some people, right? Because you probably don't want to get up. You probably don't want to get up. But you have to, right? You got to keep going. You got to keep that momentum going, right? Resistance is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. So we're quick to be like, oh, if it ain't, you know, if it take all this, then I'm out. It shouldn't take all this to get to what I need to be doing. Not so. Not so. Let's look at it in a different lens, right? Often it's confirmation that change is happening. It's confirmation that change is happening. Think about when you're lifting weights, right? Think about when you're pushing something up a hill. Think about when you're doing some type of band exercise or whatever when it comes to resistance, right? It's something is changing, right? The direction of things are changing. Something is building up, right? You're not necessarily able to see it always, right, in the natural sense right off the bat, but there is something happening in the background, right, that is having this change take place. So you're going to have it, right? In the internal process that's going on is that you're mentally, right, building up your strength, right? Your heart is being more pliable. Your thought processes are being changed, right? And externally, right, you're moving a different way. The way that you went before, you're no longer going that way, right? So you will face resistance. I'm here to tell you, you will face resistance. Fear will come into play. Doubt will come into play. Procrastination, oh, come on now, will come into play, right? Imposter syndrome will come into play. These things are what's going to resist, right, come into play when you're trying to make this change. And I think I did 4 episodes about facing your fears. So go back and watch that. We're not going to recap on that, but just go back and watch those because those are really good about how you can face them and how you can get through it and walk through that thing, right? Doubt is going to come because why? You're changing something, right? Remember we talked about identity must match your goals. If you can't see yourself in this new place, then you are not going to get there, right? And so that's where that imposter syndrome, do I belong here? Let me tell you, I got to do self-talk a lot, right, to reprogram my thinking from the way that I used to think. I don't want to be out here faking in these streets. I want you to be, when you come in contact with me, I want you to get the authentic Renee. I want you to get the authentic me, no matter what setting that you find me in, that I am being authentic. You're like, oh yeah, that's her. Yeah, because we was at, the game and boom, boom, boom. We were at work and that, like, there should be no different faces, right? Like, I literally had different, I think, personas, right? And you really think some people like bipolar or whatever, but, some of us really out here, if you're code switching and all that, look, that is bipolar behavior. At the end of the day, I'm laughing because I'm getting a picture, right? I'm getting a visual of this thing. But it is, because you must be the same person no matter what setting that you're in. And if people don't like the way that you're coming to be yourself, then you don't need to have those people in your corner. You don't need to be dealing with those people. They're not in your inner circle, but that's okay. You still want to show up as yourself. I was watching this, no, it was a show. And it was about these skaters, and the younger sister, was more kind of like really kind of bold when it came, whatever. And so they had got hired to do this birthday party, and the middle sister went out there first. When I haven't skated in a while, she did great or whatever. The other one had an injury, was coming back on the ice. She couldn't do it because she was going through PTSD. And then the younger one had actually talked to the person whose birthday it was, and they were a little upset, about what the parents had decided to do. So she kind of switched it up on them, right? And everyone loved it. The guests loved it. This and that, whatever. The only people that was mad was the parents. Crazy, right? Crazy, because the person who they were throwing the party for was delighted. They were delighted, and so here it is that she was able to be herself, and the parent went to talk to the other dad and was like, blase, 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 you need to apologize and whatever. And he had to tell him, I'm not going to apologize for my daughters and who they are, because she did what she felt was necessary in being herself and giving the birthday girl what she wanted. And so you have to be able to know that you belong in the space and that you bring your own flair and tenacity and all these type of things to those spaces, and just being the same person. So you can't keep saying like, I don't belong here, or whatever, and all these different things, because life is going to happen. It's going to happen, and you're not going to get past it. But do know that you've been built to be in that space. You've been built to walk a certain way. You've been built to think a certain way. You've been built to do certain things. And so you can't stop psyching yourself out and then just don't move. And that's also where the procrastination comes into play, because you're not trusting the process and learning and growing more to get this done. And you keep putting things off and off and off, and before you know it, time has passed. Before you know it, the job is closed, or the scholarship opportunity is gone, or the time to go, on this particular trip, the window has went and gone. And you're like, oh, well, I'll just get it. I'll just catch it next year, or whatever the case may be. Stop procrastinating. Stop procrastinating and allowing that to prevent you from getting to your goal. And you will face external resistance as well. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Because that external resistance could be the very people that you live under the same roof with. And that could be challenging. It really can be. But again, you have to be able to identify, right, in matching that goal. There will be misunderstandings. People will not understand what you are trying to do. They will try to get you to go another way, or tell you to hold off or wait up. But you have to know that it's time to go. And they don't have to understand. They don't have to get it, because they're not the ones that's been purposed to do it. And so they don't need to. And that's okay. And then in that, they might not support you. You might not find the support in the systems in which you thought that you were going to find them. But I guarantee you, as you begin to move into what you are setting out to do, that support is going to come from somewhere else. It's going to come from somewhere. People that you don't even know, because you have been designed just for this particular thing. And so I encourage you to not allow the lack of support in the systems that you thought that was going to support defer you from where you're supposed to be at. And then there's the delayed results. So remember when we talked about like this resistance, right? And when you're doing this resistance, right, you're doing this training, right, there could be a delay. Like you just not gonna pop out like all cut up or whatever. You ain't gonna have no six pack and things like that. It's going to take a minute, right? You might not get 1,000 followers overnight. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but what I am saying that sometimes the results are delayed. But that doesn't mean that you stop doing what you're doing. I was just thinking about it. I was like, I was reading about this because it was a Facebook group with podcasters or whatever. And I hadn't like literally joined, but I was looking at some of the feed and which you can do, but there's certain things that you can't get access to. But people were posting like what number podcasts they had done for the year or whatnot, and I was like, wow, okay, man, I'm pretty, kind of high up there, when it comes to how many podcasts, right, that I've done, in a year, and thinking about like, okay, how many subscribers or whatever. So you're doing your assessment, right, of what you are doing and how, things need to get done. And so that's part of one of my goals, right, to restructure and think about, okay, how are you doing this, Renee, and what is your audience, and what do you really want them to really capture and gravitate to. And so I thought it was interesting that, man, you have, started with the season, right? Because we're doing this by seasons, and that we're already, on episode 49. Based off, when our season starts, right? And our season starts in September. It doesn't start in January, right? And so I'm sorry, it starts in October. It doesn't start in January, the calendar year. I go off of the biblical year, and so that's when our season starts. And so I was like, man, we're really out here, doing some things. Like, we drop content every Monday, and that is a lot, especially when you have, other things that you're doing and other responsibilities that you're doing, and this really is not your 100%, job, career or whatever. This is something that you feel that is important to, kind of connect with people. And so 49 episodes is quite a lot, so what that you're supposed to be doing, you will find time to do it. I guarantee you. So, but do know that you're going to face those external resistance, right? And the mistake that many of us make, right, is assuming that this resistance means that it's time to stop, and it's not. It's time to keep going. So resistance, right, means that we need to reframe, right? Maybe refine some things like I was just talking about, right? And then maybe recommit, right, on some things. And we can do that, right? So I want you to ask yourself these questions, right? And I want you to think about them. You don't have to answer me out loud, right? You don't need to do that. So I want you to actually write them down. As you're sitting here thinking about how am I mapping these goals out for this year, right? So what patterns show up when I'm close to growth? So you're there, right? But what's happening, right, as you're starting to see, oh man, I'm almost there. I'm almost at the finish line. What happens? Then do I retreat when things get uncomfortable, or do I adapt? Do you retreat? Do you flee? Right? Or do you just adapt to what's happening and making the necessary adjustments, right? We talked about that, refining some things. And it's necessary. When you are, let me tell you, in life, it's just not a linear path, right? And so when you're thinking about changing things in your life, that's really what is going to happen. You're going to have to adapt to some things that's going to bring about resistance to what you're trying to do. So not every obstacle is a wall, right? And some are invitations to build more endurance, because that's what you need to build up stamina. You need to build up some endurance sometimes, right? Depending on what spaces and places that you may be going. And so you want to think about that. So I just really want you to just really think, answer those questions honestly, right? I want you to reflect on some things, right? You know, what is the resistance that you're currently facing if you've already started off in your goals, right? And how you may be misinterpreting them, and you could be, giving yourself imposter syndrome on some things, and maybe you've already aborted some things, and maybe it's time for you to go back and recommit. And so I really want you to think about that, right? And how you can respond, right, in avoiding, right, putting things down when it comes to resistance intentionally. I want you to think about that. All right, going into this very last point that I want us to get is progress is built through systems and not emotions. So it's not about how you're feeling. It's not about how you're feeling, because there are days when you don't want to do it. There are moments where you don't want to do it. You don't want to get up. You don't want to go out there. You don't want to turn it on. You don't want to pick up the paper, pick up the pen, get on the computer. You don't want to do it. You don't want to talk to people. You just don't want to do it. But it's not about your emotions. Our emotions are important because it gives us information. But when you're going to get progress moving, you have to build the system. And the system is not based off of our emotions, right? Motivation is powerful, right? But it can be inconsistent. So that's why we got to build a system for ourselves to make sure that we're going to make progress. So if your goals rely on how you feel, then you're going to stall out. You're going to stall out. Because like I said, there's going to be days where you just don't want to do it. You just don't want it. And it's the part of the makeup of the human body, right? Because again, you have resistance happening because change is taking place. There is a restructure that is happening. And there are going to be, think about the weather and someone building a house. And sometimes when the weather, like if it's raining outside, then it's probably not a good idea to be painting, right? It might be, if it's really cold outside, we got to stop, on certain projects or whatever. If we're, need to be outside and, you can't get in the streets or whatever because it's snowing so bad. Like, you have to think about these things that are going to happen. And what are you doing, right? What system is in place to make sure that you keep that progress going? If a system was built, then you can survive the difficulties of the seasons that you're going to encounter, because they're going to be difficult seasons. Again, life is just not just like this. It's just not. You're going to be going in different directions, and you got to be able to adapt. So you must build a system, right? So there are times, right? I am an early riser. I am naturally an early riser. Like if I say I'm going to sleep in, like I be saying it out loud because I'm really trying to convince myself that that's what's going to happen. And then sometimes I'll be wanting Murdoch to remind me, but he doesn't. But so my sleep in is like literally like maybe 7 a.m. 8 o'clock is like, I don't even think that's like, I could be up and I'm just like, okay, it's time to get up. What time is it? I have to keep asking Alexa what time it is, right? Because I'm like, okay, I said I was gonna sleep in. And it just doesn't really work for me. However, I'm just an early riser. And there's days where I don't want to get up at 3 something. I don't want to get up at 4 something. But I know it's necessary. I know that there are people that are counting on me to do what I'm supposed to be doing and to be in position. And so I go ahead and get up. I built a system. I built a system. Everything is timed out. And sometimes, especially when you have children, you must be adaptable. You must be adaptable, but not just even with children, but just, think different things happen. And so you have to be able to adjust in those times of difficulties, in those times where things might change up a bit. So like I was talking about, what does a system look? I was already explaining like what my system looks like. But a system looks like routine. You must have a routine. You must schedule your priorities. Because if you don't, something else is always going to be more important than what you are supposed to be doing. Something is always going to come up. But you must schedule your priorities. And when you do that, you are going to see results. Now, it's not like just be quick like that, but you are going to see results. When I have set my eyes on the prize and set myself into a system and had conversations with the people that surround me, I have seen results. And sometimes those results have taken months, years to get to. But I've seen the results because I stayed in the routine and I scheduled my priorities. It's just like when you think about going to work and you're getting all these assignments. Well, how do you determine what the priority is? Well, let's think about it, right? What are you trying to get to? Because somebody's always going to be pulling on you. And so you have to know that, okay, that's not a priority right now. Okay, maybe you can get to it, maybe you can't get to it. But you have to be honest. Does that flow in what I'm trying to do? Right now. And then there's the environmental design, right? What's going on around you? What things do I need to line up? What conversations do I need to have with people, right? And then decision reduction, meaning it's plain and simple. It's really plain and simple about how this needs to happen because I've already put my scheduled priorities, right? And when something comes up, that decision should be very easy. Because if it doesn't go into your priorities, it should be very easy. Nope or yes. Does it help me get to my goals? Does it help me on a particular small thing, right, that's going to help me get to my goals, or is this taking time away from me? Because everything that we do throughout our day takes up some amount of time. And if that time is not going towards working the works of the goal, then you have not prioritized it correctly. And so then now you're spending all this time trying to come up with a decision when it should really be easy. It really should be easy. So I want you to ask yourself, what decision am I repeating unnecessarily? That could be, systemized, right? So if I'm continuously thinking about something, or maybe if I put this into a routine or put this into a schedule, then I don't have to keep trying to come up with how I'm going to handle this, right? And how can I make the right choices easier? Well, if you put a system in place, that's one way, right? That is the simple way to do that. How can I make the right choices easier? When I was going to school, I had 4 priorities. 4. And if they did not fall in the 4, then it was like, nope, I can't do it. If I just so happen to have a little time, and I'd be like, it was even to the point of even like going on trips. It was even the point of like hanging out sometimes. It didn't fall on the floor. It didn't fall on the floor. And so if it didn't fall on the floor and it didn't get on the calendar, then it wasn't happening. And I wasn't tracking it. And so it just wasn't important to me. So You don't need more willpower. You just need better structure. And if you are not a structured person, then that's where you need to, again, going back to our other points or whatever, you need to be able to write these things out, make it plain, map it out. Is it realistic? Can you identify with it? Can you identify with it, right? You need to put a system in place, right, that's going to help you, and then making sure that you have those priorities in place. So what are your priorities? You need to list out what they are, right? And so, again, you just need structure. So you don't have procrastinating, right? If you have that structure there. So what is that one system that you can implement today that's going to support your consistency? What is one thing that you can do today? I just gave you some examples. So I want you to take some of those that you can do for yourself in whatever your goals are that you're trying to meet, right? And then I want you also to think about, am I allowing my emotions to take over what I need to be doing? Am I allowing my emotions to dictate what I should be doing? I want you to think about that. So I don't want to go over too much. I think I stated, but I thought it was really important. This last point, we don't really have to really dig into it that much, but I do want to just so you can, if you're taking copious notes. But I want you to be able to think about all of the points that we made, starting at point 1, right, and going through each and every point. And I want you to be able to review, right, what you have learned, and then also looking at your goals. I want you to look, are there some things that you need to adjust? And then throughout this whole process, one of the most important things is that you have to stay honest. Stay honest about where you started, where you are now, and where you want to go. If you can't stay honest in this, then you're going to look back, right? And it's going to be December, and you're going to wonder why you're in the same place that you were in January. And that's only because you were not honest about where you started and where you were and where you want to be. So goals are meant to be reviewed throughout, the time until you actually achieve them. Okay? So it's nothing wrong with going back and adjusting them, right? Your growth, right, requires reflection. So you have to stop. And that's what I want you to do again. As we just talked about reviewing, right? And I need you to adjust your plan. Adjust it if it's necessary. If it's failing, then it needs some adjustment, and that's okay. So, and then also if you made some progress, write it down. Celebrate those small wins so you can keep that momentum going. And don't abandon what you're supposed to be doing. Just make some adjustments. And then ask yourself, am I holding myself to a plan that no longer fits the season that I'm in? And that's when you want to abandon. Now, I know I just said don't abandon what you're supposed to be doing, right? But the thing that you're not supposed to be doing, then maybe you do need to abandon something. And that's okay, especially if it's not lining up with your priorities. And tell people, hey, I might be back and I might not be back. And that's what I had to do. So I want you to look at, what does progress look like right now, right? Without the comparison of anyone else, but what does it look like for you? What does it look like for you? Excuse me. So I want to leave you with this because we're way over our time, but I want to make sure that you got that last really important about staying honest, right? That you are not behind, but you are becoming, and becoming happens over our lifespan. Goals are not achieved by force. They are achieved by alignment and what we are aligning ourselves to. Alignment between vision and identity, between desire and discipline, and between intention and daily systems. So you don't have to rush it, but you must respect the process. You must respect the process. So if I want you to ask yourself this as well, if you continue showing up imperfectly, but consistently for the next 90 days, for the next 120 days, who could you realistically become? if you stayed consistent. So I want you to sit with that. And I think that transformation is going to happen if you stay consistent in that you are honest daily. So do know that leading is teachable, and I love you, and there's nothing else that you can do about it. If you are having challenges and really looking at how you need to map this out, I invite you. I'm here for you at www.4mosaic.com. Just reach out. Let's talk it out. Let's do this thing together, because I want you to meet the goals that you are setting out to do and what you've been purposed to do in this life. All right, love you.